Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Where do I even begin? Now, Spider-Man is pretty awesome, and I think we can all agree on that. While not every movie, and especially not every comic run is exactly the greatest thing ever, we can never truly get enough of the webhead even if we wanted to. And I'm serious, we will never escape Spider-Man. While his presence in media is most definitely more saturated than any superhero aside from maybe Batman, it's hard to complain when so many of his content and adaptations are presented with such high quality, especially in animation.
Like, what's up, danger? Like, what's up, danger?
Into the Spider-Verse was a game changer in many, many ways. It's a comic book movie with a comic book inspired style of animation that utilizes a unique composition and use of lower frame rates, as well as adding emphasis to details with sudden frames of shifting styles to pay homage to the art and medium of comics, which practically changed animation in the West forever. In just the 5 years that movie has been released, it is one of the most influential movies ever made. Both films and TV have begun utilizing this 3D style to create far more captivating and colorful animated films that give off so much more personality than the tired Pixar stuff we've been getting for quite a few years. It was also a major game changer in how it introduced general audiences to Miles Morales. Adapting a character that hasn't exactly existed for a long time and making him the focus of a theatrical movie, the first that doesn't star Peter Parker, was a big risk, and it was a risk that panned out to breathtaking results, giving us a fresh and unique take on the Spider-Man mantle that owns one of, if not the best character arc in a Spider-Man movie. Even with that, it somehow beautifully portrayed an older Peter Parker and gave him the love and respect that the character really hasn't been given in the comics for quite a few years. Not even just comics, it's one of the best iterations of the character in general. The movie gave us really cool side characters with fun personalities as well, and gave us the best on-screen depiction of Gwen Stacy in my opinion. And so, for 5 years since its release, I have continuously been saying that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie ever made. At least until now. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse to me is a perfect Spider-Man movie, which is insane because I also called Into the Spider-Verse the perfect Spider-Man movie, so that's pretty crazy, am I right? This movie feels like a fever dream. I've said that about a few movies before, but I really mean it here. This movie just does not feel real. In every possible way I can think of, this film is a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece in animation and a masterpiece in Spider-Man storytelling. Some may call it recency bias, but I don't care. The movie only gets better in my head the more that I think about it. It manages to break past the typical structure and formula that almost every superhero-based movie uses nowadays, and instead creates a captivating, character-driven narrative that pushes the characters past the limits of what you think a Spider-Man story can be. While it's full of ambitious ideas, the core of this movie's story relies in the characters, specifically two characters, Miles and Gwen. In fact, this movie makes a bold move at the very beginning, within the first 10 minutes of the film, by just not showing Miles Morales outside of minor flashbacks, and instead reintroducing us to Gwen Stacy, her universe, and her problems. And Into the Spider-Verse, you could definitely tell there was more than meets the eye to Gwen's character, and it does a pretty good job of establishing her as well as it needed to in that movie, but in this film, it takes it up 100 notches. She's just as much of the main character in this movie as Miles is, and in some ways outshines him. We see her story and her tragedies from her lenses instead of the outsider perspective we saw in the first film, showing an angst-driven relationship with her father, as well as the others around her in her life, with interactions that make it somewhat hard to watch, but in all the right ways. Just the first 10 to 15 minutes of the film are some of the most emotionally driven story beats in any of the 10 Spider-Man movies, which is incredibly impressive. We don't see Miles until after this Gwen story, but even with that, it doesn't take any time away from his own character arc. You'll notice that this movie clocks in at around 2 hours and 20 minutes, which, yeah, is a pretty damn long runtime for an animated movie, especially a movie that's only a part 1, but it really doesn't feel like it. It's really well paced, and there's so much going on that it would be criminal to not make it this long. As a matter of fact, by the time you reach the final 20 or so minutes of the movie, it doesn't even feel like it's close to over. You feel like you're just getting started. That is partly because of the ending, but also because the movie just goes by so fast due to how much stuff is going on. And yet it never feels bloated. There's so many different points and areas to cover throughout the film, and yet none of it feels dragged out or too short. It's all incredibly well done. Doctor Strange 2 and No Way Home made an attempt, but neither movie truly gave their multiverse as much life as these two movies have. In terms of just pure animation, the multiverse in this movie is handled perfectly. The different art styles, textures, and color palettes of the different universes we go to help breathe new life into them, which truly makes them feel like completely different spaces of reality. The best way to describe it is if it were like reading a comic book by one artist with a really smooth and colorful style, then jumping to a comic drawn by someone with a more rough and grittier art style. Like, if you were to show me an image of Mumbattan and an image of Miles' universe, I would think they're from two separate movies. And that's what a film like this should be doing. This is the potential that multiverses in media can reach in terms of creativity and style. And Spider-Verse does it perfectly, which is very poetic considering they kind of started this whole multiverse trend. There are a few minor moments and references in the movie that are a bit jarring to look at, but that's a given considering how ambitious it is. Plus, they don't last that long and they're easy for me to excuse when the movie just looks this damn beautiful. There's a specific scene near the end of the movie of Miles running and swinging through the city as everything from the past chases after him, creating a beautiful visual metaphor showcasing everything he's gone through up until this point and highlighting all the people that he's met that's helped him become the man he is now. The animation and symbolism of this scene is absolutely amazing and is probably my favorite moment of the entire movie, which is hard to choose because of just how many amazing scenes are in the film. The first movie already revolutionized animation in the West, and this movie is somehow doing the exact same. At least I predict that it will. Obviously we won't know until more movies come out. But it's full of such creative and ambitious ideas that in concept shouldn't work as well as they do. Like, let's talk Spider-Punk for example, who, by the way, so awesome. Love Spider-Punk, man. I think we all love Spider-Punk. He's so cool. We need more of him. Let's look at him and the animation for his character. In a recent interview, it was said that it took nearly 3 years to finish all the animation for his character, and yeah, you can really tell. The guy looks straight out of a scrapbook edit of concept art and vintage photography, which perfectly fits his character. The same can be said with Mumbattan in Spider-Man India, which was also a pretty awesome plot point of the movie. Pavitr was so fun and charismatic, man. His dialogue was the most fun out of anyone in my opinion. Plus, the team-up scene between him, Hobie, Gwen, and Miles is one of the best team-up scenes I've seen in a comic book movie. Their chemistry just worked really well there. Maybe not their chemistry, but their mixing of their spider powers. The respect and care the movie puts into representing different cultures and their own styles makes it even more easy to appreciate too. Now, there are loads of cameos and references in here to prior Spider-Man media, but anything that isn't a newly established character into the movie's canon is very limited. And that's a good thing, because it means we can focus on the characters that need the development and time to shine. The cameos and references in this movie never feel like they're taking over or carrying the plot, and instead just feel like the sprinkles on the icing to make it a more fun and rewatchable movie. They don't ever take away from the real story of the movie, which is the more grounded and character-driven struggles of Miles and Gwen to live their lives while also being heroes. Not exactly something we haven't seen in Spider-Man movies, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I haven't even gotten to talk about the Spot yet, but it is a little difficult to generate an opinion on him fully since a lot of his character is extremely unfinished. But so far from what I've seen, this guy is kind of amazing. Depending on how the next movie goes, he can easily shoot up to being the best villain in a Spider-Man story, at least in terms of movies. We see a villain you'd normally see as a villain of the week in your early Saturday morning cartoon, slowly transitioning into a force of nature with powers that go beyond what was thought to be possible, making him a terrifying force to be reckoned with. It's even more terrifying with his desire to just make Miles' life as horrible as possible to make up for what his actions have done to him. He's kind of like the reverse Flash of Spider-Man villains. If there's one type of villain I like, it's a villain who is driven by sheer hatred for the hero. Not even just evil ideals, no. They just want to do everything in their power to ruin the main character's life. And the Spot so far has been a fantastic example of that, especially since he kinda has a lot of reasons to hate Miles as much as he does. Like, seriously, his hate is pretty justified. Not him trying to kill his loved ones and destroy the multiverse, no, that's too far. But seriously, just the overall anger he has directed at him, you can't really blame the guy. The animation for his descent and transformation into a stronger and more powerful force also creates this amazing sense of body horror and cosmic horror. The guy's progression throughout the film is just terrifying, and his appearance at the end of the film, goddamn, gave me goosebumps. The animation does wonders for his character, and he is definitely going to shoot up in mainstream popularity a lot now because of this film. It's really cool that we're using a relatively unknown Spider-Man rogue for this film, because it's very easy to simply turn him into a Miles villain since he's not really all that relevant to Peter, so stacking up his rogues gallery with characters that previously weren't all that to now being horrifying and great villains is really cool to see, especially since the Spot in this movie has nothing to do with Peter Parker in this universe. But seriously, onto the real star of the show. Miles' growth as a character is just amazing. We always see just how important it is for Peter's identity to be kept secret, but I don't think any of the Raimi, Webb, or Watts films explore it as deeply as Across the Spider-Verse does, because that's really the entire emotional drive of the movie. You can see in every interaction with his parents just how badly Miles wants to tell the truth, but he just can't bring himself to do it. They add these little movements and facial expressions to subtly portray the struggle of trying to decide whether or not he should tell the truth because of how uncertain the future is because of it. We know this is a part of Spider-Man, but the writers of this movie take it the extra mile, which I appreciate so much from them. His resolve in the lobby section of the story and his drive to try and save everyone in a society of Spider-Men that seems to be contradicting their morals was fantastic. Which brings me to my next point, which is that Miguel O'Hara is a perfect foil for Miles in this story. Although he is very clearly overly aggressive towards him, he's still trying to do the right thing despite how misguided he is about these things. One thing I do want to point out is that Miguel in this movie kind of represents that whole crowd who pushes the Miles Morales isn't Spider-Man narrative. And it really slaps those people in the face, figuratively at least, for making up a narrative as stupid as that. Especially since Miles in this movie is representing the Spider-Man title better than anyone else here. The whole point of Spider-Man is that anyone can wear the mask. We saw that in the first movie, Miles and Peter both tell us this. But Miguel completely goes against this by trying to get into Miles' head with his belief that his existence as Spider-Man is a mistake, showing a Spider-Man who's lost his way, both because of his guilt of what he did in the past and how it's taken over his mental state. But even then, Miles doesn't crumble. He wants to save everyone and to continue being Spider-Man because it's where he knows he's doing right. There's a chain of fate that shackles every Spider-Man, and Miles represents breaking that fate, to create your own future, to end the cycle of suffering that every Spider-Man goes through. He's practically a slap in the face to comic book writers for Spider-Man. He's the hope that they don't have. He aims for the future that they don't believe is possible despite everything telling him it's not possible to do. Whether or not he succeeds in this depends on how Beyond the Spider-Verse goes, but seeing a Spider-Man that doesn't give up hope as well as inspiring that hope into the ones around him to do the right thing is always amazing to see. A lot of people say a lot of the Spider-Men were being very out of character, but I don't really agree. They just don't have a solution, and it's not their place to try and come up with one. Like when you look at Peter B. Parker here in this movie, he's not outright agreeing with Miguel or going against Miles. A lot of people are interpreting it as that, but it's not true. That's not what's going on. He's just trying to help Miles throughout the movie, whether it be through trying to have a conversation with him to try and prepare him for what feels like the inevitable, or when he decides to fight on his side by the end of the film. He is on Miles' side for the entire movie, he just doesn't know how to go about it because it's Miles' world and Miles' issues, and he has his own stuff to be dealing with, such as his baby, which is why I love this movie because of all the nuance nuance it has surrounding this incredibly broad concept. Seeing Miles' resolve throughout the movie is just amazing. It's what Spider-Man is supposed to be. And that's why I believe that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse as of now is a perfect Spider-Man movie. My favorite Spider-Man movie, and overall just one of the best comic book films put to screen. This could change if Beyond the Spider-Verse doesn't live up to expectations, but there's really no reason for me to not trust the people working on it after they've given us two of the best animated movies ever made. So yeah, I have faith. But yeah, I love this movie if you couldn't tell. I think it's a masterpiece and an amazing love letter to the Spider-Man franchise. If you haven't seen it yet, well, then I don't know why you stayed till the end of the video since I spoiled everything, but thanks anyways. If you did enjoy the video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I plan on doing a full ranking of the Spider-Man movies in a couple weeks, so you'll definitely want to stay tuned for that. And with all that being said, that's all I have for you guys today. I'll see y'all next time. Bye bye.